people say millennials are lazy and entitled, and it's not true.
Yeah.
Millennials actually work more than baby boomers did at their age. It's just you guys are working on your phones, you're working on weekends, you're working all the time. And inspire a millennial to get behind a cause, behind a mission. And I mean, that they'll give their life to you.
Yeah.
This is the Real Talk University podcast, where your hosts, Andre and Christian, explore success stories outside of the classroom.
Yeah, my name's Jason Jordan. I'm a professional speaker. I used to do more in the keynote world, if you're familiar with that, going out and doing talks at different business organizations and that sort of thing, big events. But nowadays I'm doing a lot more training than I am keynoting. One of those things, when you start having kids, you're really not that interested anymore in traveling all over the world. You really want to be home to spend some time with them. So I started working with businesses here, mainly around San Diego, working on getting all of their people on the same page as far as the corporate FireStory, and helping all the individuals speak better, more intelligently, and speaking for influence. And then from there, I opened up several independent, what I call firebrands groups, which are everything from entrepreneurs with great ideas that need help and inspiration and development, to people who are already running businesses that are in growth mode, and helping them really get their message out and speak more effectively.
Awesome. So were you always a good speaker? Like, were you always good at public speaking, or did you kind of go through like a transformation?
Well, as with everything, there were transformations all along the way, but I actually started back in the fourth grade. I was, my elementary school had a public speaking contest for the fifth graders. And then the fourth graders were just allowed to talk to their class. And then the fifth graders went in assembly in front of the whole school and that sort of thing. And they liked my presentation. It was on the American bald eagle. I grew up in Canada, so I thought they would enjoy a little glimpse of American culture there. And they liked the speech so much, they asked if I wanted to compete with fifth graders. And so I got up there, and there were probably, I don't know, 200-300 people in the audience, just parents and other students around the school and all that. And everybody else was crazy nervous, throwing up in trash cans and all that good stuff. And I just loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. My 5 minutes ended, and I was like, when can I do that again? That was great.
That's awesome. That's so
cool. Yeah, it's funny. That happened all the way back in fourth grade. And ever since then, it's been this long and windy road to try and get back to that first love.
Yeah, so I'm assuming now, like, the people you coach are those guys that were throwing up in garbage cans and kind of nervous. So, like, how did you kind of build like a platform or an educational system to like help these guys get to where you're at and find enjoyment through doing it, or just be able to go up and do it without throwing up in garbage cans before?
Well, I mean, like everything else, practice helps. Getting up there regularly in front of groups helps. Most people have access to Toastmasters clubs. I don't know if you've ever looked into that up there in Binghamton, but I'm sure there's a number of clubs up there. Yeah. And it's a great way really to find audiences and get in front of them and get used to starting to speak. A lot of people will give you tricks and tips and that sort of thing, and those don't really do much. There's no substitute for just doing it and doing it again and doing it again. Yeah. The difference that I provide is I teach really a different type of speaking, which I call, which is known as extemporaneous speaking, which is, it's not written out and memorized. You kind of outline it. You get an idea of what you want to say. You maybe go over it in your head, but the first time you present is the first time it's actually officially given.
Wow.
And in business these days, that's what most presentations are. Nobody says, I want you to speak for 5 to 7 minutes in front of this assembly or whatever, and you can practice for 2 months and get really good at it. It's, hey, our number one client's going to be in after lunch. You're going to speak for an hour about how the region is doing or this new product is. And people panic because they have no experience in this, but they know the product or they know the region or whatever. So what do? They open up PowerPoint and just vomit everything that they know onto their PowerPoint slides in 200 or so pages and bullet points running down each page. And then they turn around and they read it to you in what is always the most boring presentation you have ever seen in your life.
So true.
Everybody just pops out their phone and starts checking email right in the middle of it, right?
Yeah.
So what I teach people how to do is really be storytellers. And most of us kind of hide behind the data that we want to share. We want to, I work with some people that are Microsoft resellers, and I say, what do you want to present on? They say the 37 new features of Microsoft 365 in the cloud. That's going to be the worst presentation ever. What do you want the audience to know? They say the 37 new features of Microsoft in the cloud. No, that's not going to work. And we dig into it and we get them to start sharing stories of clients that they've helped, clients whose businesses have been transformed by going into the cloud. And that's really what makes a great presentation. That's what wins people over. There's emotion. It's great stuff. And suddenly people aren't looking at their phones. People are paying attention. People are hanging on their every word. They're like, oh my gosh, this can be enjoyable. This is crazy.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Like the best speeches like I've heard are like more like stories rather than just like listing off things. And it's just more natural and like the audience can relate to it more.
Yeah, absolutely true. And that's really what you're looking for, right? You're looking for something to connect to. I mean, there's so much data these days. You know what I mean? I mean, you've got the internet is out there, and I mean, you can believe whatever you want to believe from a data standpoint.
Yeah.
You can believe that the earth is flat. There's the flat earthers movement, and there's tons of people on that.
Yeah.
And you can go out and they're not just dreaming this up. They've got a mountain of data that demonstrates that the earth is flat, and they'll show it to you. How do you separate what's actually data and what's not? But what people can't really argue with is experience. What is that story that you or somebody close to you experience that has emotion and has meaning? And that's what really moves people.
Yeah, it's so true. So like, was there like a given point, obviously you're an entrepreneur. So like, was there like a given time in your life where you just kind of discovered like, oh, like I'm an entrepreneur and that's like kind of what I was born to do?
I think everybody has, it's probably around the time when you have your first awful boss, right? The first time when you have a boss that just makes your life a living hell, you go, maybe I should work for myself. That would be a heck of a lot better than this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we've all been through those times, but I went to business school and studied entrepreneurship there, and participated in some business plan seminars and business plan competitions. And there's a lot to it. And there's a lot to putting together the full plan and the finances of the plan. And then you have to secure that and, make sure that your idea not only has legs, but you can defend it against other people just swooping in and stealing it. And it becomes a real challenge, more challenging than people really think.
Yeah.
To put together a real entrepreneurial business. Obviously, there are side businesses. You guys are doing one right now with your podcast is a great side business, and hopefully someday maybe it'll be your main business. I guess it is for some, but there's a lot of competition obviously in that world.
Right. Of course.
Yeah. So was there ever a specific moment, like you said with entrepreneurship, but was there a specific moment or life-changing event that led you to finding your purpose?
That's a great question, because obviously going back, I knew that I wanted to be a speaker, and as I was doing it, I was actually speaking and traveling around a lot, talking about the different generations. I was teaching corporations how to work with millennials, Generation X, baby boomers, and even traditionalists as they were on their way out, and doing that traveling, and it was great. I loved being up in front of an audience. But the real shift came when I started, people started asking me, how do you do what you do? And they'd be amazed because I would go to a conference and I would be the keynote at the conference, and I would still be taking notes and sketching things with the presenter right before I got up.
Wow.
And then I'd get up there and come up with a presentation just right there.
Wow.
And it was fresh and it was organic and it was referencing the other things that they had been witnessing at the conference. And people started saying, how do you do that? How do you come up with an hour keynote on the spot? And so I started thinking about it. That's a good question. How do I do that? And it was all about storytelling, and it was all about getting into the emotion of it and diving deep into that. And so that was really kind of my aha moment was, you know what, I can teach people how to share these stories. And then the big moment, I would say, came the first time I saw Simon Sinek's Golden Circle and all that. You guys have seen that?
Amazing.
Of course,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that was just earth-shattering to me, this start with why. But then, of course, you run into that brick wall of, well, how do you find your why?
Yeah.
And what's great is he dances around how you get to that why, because that's why people pay him $250,000 to come in and consult with their company and show them what their why is. And so I started diving into it with other people, and what I was finding was once you get through all the data, all the kind of wall that we've built around ourselves and our belief and our worldview, there's always a story that shapes that. And so I started calling that the FireStory.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, and so it's those big moments, and we all have them, but it's those big moments of change that when you tap into those, that really moves it. And so I said, you know what, I don't want to travel around that much anymore. I still keynote some, but I'd really like to just kind of settle in, work with people on their FireStory, and teach them how to tell it.
Right. So how did you come up with the term FireStory? Is it based on like sitting around a campfire or something like that?
It kind of is. There was some research done actually a few years ago on this group, the Kalahari Bushmen, and they exist kind of how people believed that earliest man existed. And the idea was before we domesticated and learned to control fire, the day was very short, right? We were at the mercy of the sun. So when the sun would go down, it became cold. We became vulnerable to nighttime predators and that sort of thing. So we had to accomplish everything in the day. So communications were very tactical.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we learned to domesticate fire, it wasn't an individual thing. Most people weren't, all the people didn't have their own individual fires. There was one group one. And then the people would come around and cook their food, and the day was extended, and there was protection and warmth and all this stuff provided. And so people would gather around these fires, and they would start sharing ideas. They would start sharing new visions, new things, and they would start to collaborate. And so they said, really, it was out of these fireside moments that human culture really started to develop. And so that's really where it came from, the FireStory. It's those meaningful stories that we would share with other people around a fire, but also it's that fire that lights up our passion inside and drives us forward. So it's got a couple meanings.
That's awesome.
Right. So could you take us through the process of how you get, or how you like evoke someone else's FireStory, whether it's a business or an individual?
Yeah, that's always a fun experience, and it's a challenging one because I never know how long it's going to take. Most people aren't in touch with those stories that really have meaning, and so you got to get in and you got to start sifting through things. And I ask a lot of questions, and what I'm really looking for is that spark of emotion. When people start telling a story and their face starts getting red and they start sitting forward and you can see their hands clenching up and people start to get really excited. And then I know I'm onto something. And so I keep kind of digging in that area to get the full idea of the story, ask them how they felt. The emotion behind it is a big deal. And so yeah, I'd say more than half of the time the tears start coming. I mean, it's that deep for a
Wow.
lot of the people. And then I know I'm on one of them. There's usually many. I mean, we all have many of these kind of life-changing moments.
Yep.
But that's when I know I'm on one, and we start to unpack what's the meaning behind that. And so in a business setting, depending on if you're entrepreneurial and you're looking for support, maybe you're looking for investors, first clients, whatever, sharing that really generates an understanding not only of what you do, but what you're about.
Exactly.
It really reveals your why rather than just telling somebody in a nice pithy statement. It really reveals the motivation behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so people latch on. And the cool part about it is as a business grows, if the story is continually told, it attracts the right people in. And if you are running an entrepreneurial business, you can't make bad hires.
Yep.
I mean, every dollar is precious. And so every bad hire is, oh my God, what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And so attracting in the right people and getting them onto the cause becomes critical. And then as the organization continues to grow and grow and grow, what you find is people become more and more disconnected from the central mission behind the company. It becomes corporate speak, mission statements, core values, all that stuff. And people are there to just trade their hours for dollars. It's, I mean, and the boss isn't looking, so I'm going to jump on Facebook or, Instagram or whatever. And I'm going to check my following on Twitter. Oh, here comes the boss. I better look like I'm working, But when they know and understand the mission, the story, the FireStory behind the company, now they have something to get on to. And I mean, that's been the fascinating thing. People say millennials are lazy and entitled, and it's not true.
Yeah.
Millennials actually work more than baby boomers did at their age. It's just you guys are working on your phones, you're working on weekends, you're working all the time. And inspire a millennial to get behind a cause, behind a mission. And I mean, that they'll give their life to you.
Yeah, it's actually incredible. Yeah. So like obviously sharing these fire stories as a business or as an individual, like just discovering it, like it could have like a huge impact just because like your why is so important. People could relate to it. So like, do you have like a favorite case study with one of your clients that you've just watched them go through an amazing transformation?
Oh, sure. I mean, everyone that I work with, I don't stop until I come up with it.
Yeah.
I one that springs to mind recently is a person that I was working with who is a copywriter, and she's an amazing copywriter, and it was always sort of her dream to be a writer. She's real introverted, so that's what she likes to do. And maybe a year and a half ago, she split off from the corporate world to pursue her dream of being a writer. And she came to me and she said, yeah, I'm going to give up on this and go back and get a corporate job and do my normal copywriting because the family needed her income. The kids needed the extra money and that sort of thing. And so she was ready to give up. And we kind of started climbing into her past And she revealed this story about going to college, and she was a great athlete in college. She was played soccer, played softball, played volleyball, all through high school. And then when she got to college, the family had a lot of sacrifices to get her to go to college. And she tried to walk onto the volleyball team, and they told her, no way, everybody here's on scholarship, all that stuff. So she went in and she started being like a reporter for the school and writing for the school newspaper using her writing skills to get to know the coach of the volleyball team.
Wow.
And finally got to know the coach of the volleyball team and said, hey, you got to try me out. And so she finally gave her a chance, liked what she saw, and said, you know, this is great. Come in tomorrow and we're going to do a final workout and we're going to sign you up. And she was going to be on the team. And she called her mom, super excited to share this with her. And her mom reminded her of her responsibilities. You've got a lot of work to do. You're new at this school. You've already got the paper that you're working outside on. You've got a lot of stuff going on here. Can you really afford to take this extra bet? And so she said she got all the way up to the door and had her hand out to knock on the door. And the weight of the responsibility, she just said, no, I probably can't do it. And she walked away. Wow. Never knocked on that door. And I mean, there was profound regret in the story. It clearly affected her on a very deep level. And bringing back up that story was like, oh my God, I'm at the door again. I'm right here with my writing career. I'm ready to knock on the door, and I'm ready to walk away from it again. And I'm not going to go through that again. It just rekindled her fire and her passion for writing. And what's been amazing is when she recommitted like that, all these new clients just started finding their way to her. It's amazing how the universe will conspire to give you what you want when you really know what you want. And so that was a great example of just a story from the past that people put back there and, oh, it happened to me way back then. It's not relevant. Well, yes, it is. I mean, it's foundational. It forms your character. Yeah. And sometimes those greatest moments, like me standing up in front of that school, shape your passion. But sometimes it's the other side. Sometimes it's the regret. It's the opportunities missed.
Yeah, through like pain and stuff like that.
Yeah, that make you say, you know what, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to make that same mistake.
That's awesome.
And yeah. So that's just one that springs to mind that was recent, that was really amazing.
That's cool.
So I was reading online that you said that a lot of corporations don't really know their why. Why do you think that is, that many of them aren't aware of it?
Well, I've been involved in other entrepreneurial businesses, and if you get involved in it, you're going to notice something right off the bat, that everything is crisis mode. Most small businesses operate on just a tight shoestring budget, and so every win is a big deal. Every dollar that comes in, when the check comes, you know, it's we get to live another month. You know, everybody's so excited, and so most of them get so involved in that day-to-day finance of it that if they're successful, when it actually starts to grow, they really forget about what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, usually there's that core group there that knows and understands the why just innately. It's never stated, it's never written, it's never anything like that. But it all becomes about, you know, your whatever your product is and the competition and the finances of it. We made this much money last month and we spent this much, and yay, aren't we great? and then that core group lives and dies on that because they did for a long time.
Yeah.
The rest of us, we come on board and we're like, yeah, this really doesn't get me all that excited. Okay, you made a bunch of money. Good for you. What about the rest of us? And so that story just sort of gets left behind. And then as it grows even bigger, you end up with, an HR department, and the HR department, they have no idea what that story is. They have no idea the mission behind that. They're looking at resumes, and they're picking out keywords from resumes and trying to find the right qualifications to mix into the needs of that role. And it's really not what it's about.
Yeah, that's so true.
Most of those skills, any of us can learn in a fairly short period of time. But if you find somebody who fits culturally, who believes what you believe, I mean, the knock on millennials is they spend 20 months with a company, but they'll spend 10 years with a company if they believe in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
So
huge.
what company, in your opinion, what company does it the best?
Wow, that's a loaded question. There are a few companies that are smaller companies that I work with right now that are doing it right. I work with a small medical company called Global One that is changing the way we do medical billing, and they're making leaps and bounds changes. But that's a deep well to really understand what they're doing. You have to have, I mean, you guys look athletic. You have to have blown out a knee or a shoulder or something like that to really understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
As far as bigger companies go, the real cult of personality these days is Elon Musk.
Yep.
He certainly has a vision. He's uncompromising in a Steve Jobs kind of way. He really doesn't care what people say he should do and shouldn't do. He's going to do what he believes is right.
Yep.
And, I'm sure he's going to fall flat on his face a couple of times. He already has. He probably will again, just like Steve Jobs did going. But I don't think his vision's going to go away.
Yeah,
he just sees a better way of doing things, and he's not going to stop until it happens. I think that's the problem Apple has right now. And part of my keynotes that I do when I'm talking on FireStory is I show them Steve Jobs introducing the original iPhone versus the new guys introducing the iPhone 10. And it's the difference is astonishing. And Steve is all about story. I mean, that's what he does, and it's funny and it's interesting, and it has pain and it solves problems. And these new guys are all about, look at how thin the bezel is, and look at how dense the pixelation is. And most of us are going, I really don't care about any of that. Solve a problem for me. And look at it, you go, this phone isn't really different from my iPhone 7 that I have right now, so I'm not going to upgrade. And that's what they're facing right now. They haven't solved any problems.
Yeah, it's so true. That's
So
really
back to what you were talking about when like corporations don't know their fire story or their why. When you're helping them out, do you try to rewire them from the ground up, like from the original founders that knew the story but have kind of lost sense of it, or do you like kind of apply it to the people that never understood it?
No, I absolutely do, and honestly, that's the companies that I work with. I will only work with either an entire business unit or an entire company. Other than for individual presentations, I don't coach individuals or pieces of an organization. And especially if somebody hires me on to work with their company and then the leader isn't showing up, I'll stop working with them. And it's because it's got to be everybody from the receptionist at the front door to the CEO has to be invested in this.
Wow. Right.
And magical things happen when everybody there starts sharing why the company has meaning in their lives, what attracted them to this.
Because it could it could reveal like whys that no one actually realized, even the founders themselves, like when they first started, which is cool.
Oh yeah, and watching that actually come out, that's why that's another thing about training programs. There's a lot of training programs out there that'll take you away for a weekend or go to a keynote. And I don't know if you've ever been to these, and you come out of it, you're all inspired. Yeah, that was awesome. And you're psyched. And then 4 days later, reality sets back in, and you're back doing whatever it was you were doing. That's why when I work with companies, it's every single week I'm in there working with them and just chipping away at things, constantly reminding them, zeroing in on that FireStory, making it better, getting individuals fire stories front and center so other employees can understand more about them and what motivates them. And man, if you're in a company where you are known, where you feel like people know you and get you and understand you, that's huge. It's huge because ordinarily nobody cares. Get your work done and that's it.
Yeah.
Feeling like important and valued in a company is definitely huge if you want to keep feeling motivated to like show up every single day. I feel like definitely. So switching, all right. Yeah. So switching topics here, like a main focus of our podcast is obviously college because we're college students. We're targeting a college audience. So did your college experience majoring in entrepreneurship help you with what you're doing today? Like any skills that you learned?
So I focused in entrepreneurship through graduate school. So when I got my MBA, I focused in that. Undergrad, I was a history major.
Oh, really?
I did one of those magical things where junior year they said, okay, you have to declare a major. And I went, all right, what do I have the most credits in? They said, looks like history. I said, okay, I'm a history major. There we go. And I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really didn't. I ended up spending 10 years in sales working for a great company called Reynolds and Reynolds. Had way more freedom than any post-college guy should have. I ran Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas, if you can imagine that. I was in car dealerships with like 8 cars on their lot. It was really comical in the deep South,
Yeah.
And, but all that's part of it. If you don't know specifically what it is you want to do, you just got to get out there and do something that might be inspiring. And little by little, it starts to chip away at things. And maybe like me, you'll discover that, hey, I need more education, which is what I did. I was like, I only know sales. I need to know finance. I need to know accounting. I need to know all these other pieces if I'm going to run my own business. And so that's when I said, all right, I'm going back to school. And this time I'm going to pay attention and go to class. And I did. It was a life changer for me. Some of you guys know what you want to do in undergrad. I think that's amazing. People come out, they know they want to be an engineer. They know they want to be a scientist. They know they want to be a doctor. I wish I did, but I surely did not. It was a long path of discovery.
Yeah. Well, it all worked out.
It did. It took me an awfully long time to get here, but finally made it.
So like every day, like when you wake up, like what inspires you to do what you do? Is it your work, your family, or something else?
The family was an interesting thing because the family obviously pulled me from wanting to travel too much. I've got a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I really enjoy being an involved dad and, taking my kids to the games and to skateboard parks and all that kind of stuff. So being able to stay here was important to me. But I'll tell you, when you start digging into people's fire stories, you can't help but be committed to helping them.
Yeah.
Like when you really understand somebody and you understand the pain or the joy or the commitment or the passion behind somebody, you just can't help but get behind them. And the problem that I had before was I was constantly just working with people for free because I couldn't help myself. I wanted to help them, and they were entrepreneurs, and they didn't have any money. So I'd say, just forget about it. We'll just get together and I'll help you with this stuff. Just because I was so moved by their story. But now with the groups that I've got, I'm able to, it's kind of like CrossFit. Have you guys ever been to CrossFit?
Sort of.
Yeah.
I do a variation of it, but yeah.
Do you really? So what I've come up with is kind of the CrossFit of the speaking training world. You know, on one side, you've got like 24-hour fitness or something, which is, here's the stuff, go in and figure it out. And then on the other end, you've got personal trainers who will work with you and they'll get you to where you want to go, but they're like expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
And sort of in the middle, you've got CrossFit, where one guy is going to coach maybe 20, 25 people at a time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the world that I found myself in, was I can coach 25 people at a time and give them all the skills that they need and the experience that they need at a price level they can all afford.
Yep. That's got to be motivation right there. I mean, if you're helping 25 people discover their, discover their passion, I mean, that has to be all the fire you would need, really.
Oh yeah. There's tears flowing at just about every meeting. And it's so cool to see, you know, big, strong football playing guys breaking down in tears because they've revealed something that sometimes their family doesn't even know these things, and it just comes out.
It's amazing.
And yeah, it's so cathartic for them and great to be a part of.
Absolutely. So we just have a few questions before we do what we call a lightning round. But before that, what is your take on failure? Like, how often have you failed, and what have you learned from the mistakes that you made?
Failure pretty much constantly, I'd say. You know, it's hard. My father started at the lowest level of his company and worked really hard as a salesman, made regional manager, then divisional manager, then product manager, then he ran countries. And when he retired, he was CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Wow.
He's kind of that story that you never hear anymore, of somebody just working hard and being successful from nothing.
Yeah.
And so that was my measuring stick. Not a very good measuring stick, right? That doesn't happen very often. And so, you know, I had a great career in sales, but I never made like divisional manager or anything like that. So I considered myself a failure. And then, you know, I switched over and I worked for Hyatt for a little while, and never made it to the upper echelons with Hyatt opening hotels. And I kept considering myself a failure because I was using my father's measuring stick, which I don't think anybody should do that. But finally realizing, you know, it's the effect that I've had on people's lives that really matter. The changes that I've helped people with, the people who look back and say, wow, you know, I helped make this company and you were a part of it. That's what really matters. And so failure is just a matter of perspective, how you look at it. And that's what really counts to me.
That's awesome. And then on the flip side of that, last question, what does success mean to you? Like, if you could define the word successful, what would you say?
So success for me, for my own career is doing what I love, which, I mean, I wake up every morning. I can't believe that I get paid to do this. I enjoy it so much.
Yeah.
So there's that success. And then there's just having an impact on other people's lives really makes a big difference. Being able to look back and see what you helped create to help make, that makes all the difference, I think.
That's awesome.
It's got to be like fulfilling for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So now we're going to do what we call like a lightning round. It's like 4 quick questions. Just give like a little short response. So the first one is like, if you could have a conversation with your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you'd give to him?
Don't give up on your dream.
Awesome.
Don't give up on your dream. I knew what I wanted to be all the way back, and
Really?
And took a long and winding road. So even at 18, don't give up on your dream.
Awesome. So what's the worst advice you've ever received, and then the best advice you've ever received?
That's a good one. The worst advice I've ever received. Huh. You'd think I'd be quicker on this. I don't know.
Everyone stumbles on this question.
The worst advice I've ever received. The worst advice is whenever you deviated from what you truly believe to do something just for money.
Yeah.
A lot of times I used to take projects where I was like, well, I really have no interest in this, or this isn't in my wheelhouse, but it pays. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And it makes a real difference when you can pass those things up. So I'd say the worst advice is do it for the money. It's all about the Benjamins or whatever they say. It's a lie. Don't do it for the money.
Awesome. And then the best advice you've ever received.
My dad was full of great sayings a long time ago, and I think my favorite one that I remember from him is the grass is always greener over the septic tank. Which is one of those that you stop and you think about for a little bit, but it's true. A lot of people will try and convince you to go in a direction because it looks better than the situation that you're currently in.
Yep.
But usually it's greener for
That's
a reason.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what was your best purchase of $100 or less?
Best purchase of $100 or less? Well, I was working in the corporate world when the first iPhone came out.
Oh, nice.
And they forced me to be on a BlackBerry. They said, no iPhones. This was back in the day. Nobody would do this. They said, we all had to be on a BlackBerry. And I had been watching the iPhone for years. I even back when I had all these different devices, I was like, man, we need one that just pulls it all together. And I was so excited about it. And then when the iPhone 3G came out, the second generation, a buddy of mine went out and waited in line and all that stuff. And I said, well, what are you going to do with your iPhone 1? He said, I don't know. You want it? I'll sell it to you for $100. And so I bought the very first iPhone a year later for $100. And man, I love that thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so cool.
Walked around with my BlackBerry and my iPhone, one in each pocket.
Yeah, probably use the iPhone a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the last thing we have for you is, what message would you put on a billboard for the whole world to see?
I think it would be under my Firebrands logo, which are the Firebrands groups that I start up. It says share your passion, light up the world. And that would be what I would probably put out there is share your passion and light up the world.
That's
and,
awesome.
Of course, the hard part is discovering that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where they go to you for.
Right. Yeah, that was a great way to kind of wrap it up there, but that's all we have for you. I mean, if you have any questions for us, feel free, but
I didn't know I was allowed to ask you guys questions.
Sure, you can, yeah.
That's great. How did you decide to get started on this?
Well, basically, like, we didn't know each other till like the first week of college, and we were just kind of like shocked that like everyone around us was kind of competing for the same thing, like to get good grades, just like for the same result, to like get into the job funnel. And like nowadays, like there's just so much opportunity to do great things outside of the classroom. So we just got together and we're like, let's just like go around and interview whoever we can who's doing like kind of like innovative things outside of the classroom, and like following obviously their passions is one big theme and stuff like that. So
I see. And where would you guys like to take this? What's the next step?
Well, the long-term goal would definitely be to take this to other colleges, like have people do the same thing we're doing under our name.
Yeah, so it would be like a branded thing, and there'd be like a website or some kind of like blog website, but in the form of a podcast rather than like written things. So like every college, depending who we could license it with, would have like their own Real Talk University. And then we'd also have like, we'll be able to like teach students like how to go through this medium, like how to start a podcast, what equipment you need, all that, like how to reach out to people, all that kind of stuff.
Nice. So it's kind of like a franchise that you're looking to start up.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a bigger brand for sure.
Yep.
Nice. And what do you hope to inspire the other students to do?
We just hope that other people find the same vision that we had, that like college, when you're there, a lot of people just focus on their grades and don't really see what else is possible. Like if we can help other people realize what can be done without like on to supplement the classroom, and then after college would be
Yeah.
huge.
And just the way they do things, like there's different, like nowadays there's just so many different ways to do things. And I feel like college just kind of teaches them to do everything the same way. And all that kind of stuff. Like with social media, like people just use social media to be entertained. Like we use social media to like capitalize on this kind of stuff. So like there's just many like simple things like throughout the process, but like the overall goal is just to like think differently and just like open your eyes to bigger possibilities for yourself.
Think differently, huh?
Well, yeah, not Steve Jobs. Yeah. That's the problem. We can't really say that, but
he's gone now. He isn't going to be upset.
But yeah,
rolling over
those
his
lines.
grave or something.
Yeah,
I think it's great what you guys do, and you're absolutely right. That college can be so much more than we make it, and
Thank you.
Yeah, people are either focused on the grades on one end or having fun on the other end.
Yeah.
And you guys are taking it in a different direction, which I think is to be admired.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. It means a lot. And there's also just like you go to class and those people sitting next to you, like there's great opportunities to network and like build lasting relationships and do great things with other of your peers, which is cool.
For sure. Who could I hook you up to that would be an amazing interview for you guys?
Well, I'm not sure if you know him, but Simon Sinek.
Not yet.
No, you'll definitely be connected with him because I think like you guys have such a similar mindset and obviously and are trying to do the same things, which is amazing. So
yeah, I do feel a kindred spirit connection with him, but I think a lot of people do, which is what makes him so popular.
Yeah, he's amazing.
We're open to interviewing anybody that has a really cool story. So if you ever know of anybody, just feel free to let us know.
All right. I'll think about that, but you're looking for that cool story. So I'm there.
Yeah. Well, this one was
and focused in the entrepreneurial world, or
loosely. I mean, it could be.
Yeah, like just really any story where like you kind of just go and like chase something that you really care about rather than like staying strapped to like what society tells you to do or just like the norm, basically.
Right.
So it tends to be entrepreneurial.
It could be like an artist or an athlete or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. A couple of people just sprung to mind, so I'll see if I can hook you guys up.
Awesome. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. We'll let you know when this gets put out there and everything, but really appreciate your time. Learned a lot for sure.
That sounds great, guys. I got to say, I admire the fact that you've even made your bed back there. I didn't used to do that when I was in college, so.